Thousands living unsheltered in Marion and Polk counties endure harsh seasons, hot and cold. Local governments are part of a regional coordinated plan to end homelessness, which each year requires a January one-day count of as many unsheltered people as they can locate and talk to. It's called a point-in-time count. Heading it for the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency's ARCHES program is Robert Marshall. Every year, he heads to the far corners of our community, passionate about this key element to ending the homeless crisis. Welcome to InSight. I'm glad to have you here. We're going to be talking about the point-in-time count. What is it, and how do you go about doing it? Because so much is riding on it.
Absolutely. Wendy, thank you again for having me and allowing me the opportunity to speak with you and the InSight program today. The point-in-time count, as you mentioned, is a count done by the Housing and Urban Development every year. HUD requires that communities conduct the count every 2 years, but Marion and Polk County opt to conduct the count every year just because so much changes in a 12-month period, even more changes in a 48-month period, that we want to make sure that we are continuing to identify the trends in Marion and Polk County and to better adapt our services. The reason why the point-in-time count is so important is it gives us that glimpse of what homelessness looks like, on just one given night. It's literally just that one night. So for 2022, it was how many people were experiencing homelessness on January 24th. How many people were either staying outside in a place not meant for human habitation, or how many people were staying in a shelter. And that tells us how many individuals were homeless or staying in a shelter, living on the streets for just that one period. The point-in-time count, while it is nice to get that snapshot of what homelessness looks like for just that one night, we know that it's not an accurate reflection of homelessness in Marion and Polk County, because it's just counting individuals on that one night of individuals that are experiencing homelessness. So if they were in a hospital that night, they weren't technically considered homeless on that night. If they, happen to, they bounce back between, staying with family and staying in a shelter or staying outside. It also just reflects the number of individuals that are experiencing homelessness in places not meant for human habitation in an unsheltered environment, such as parks, camps, vehicles, and those that are staying in shelters. So it doesn't count individuals that are classified as homelessness by HUD's definition that are staying, in like doubled up in households. So, there's more than one person, living in a household, or, individuals that are, kind of bouncing, between, back and forth to places. It's really only calculating just those two subsections, I guess, of homelessness. And so it gives us an accurate idea. It gives us a semi-accurate idea of how many people are homeless on just that one night, but it doesn't reflect homelessness over that 12-month period.
I was looking at your agency Facebook page, and it says currently there are over 3,500 people in the Salem-Keizer area suffering from homelessness. That's a lot of people. And it also says that homelessness is considered a silent killer. What does that mean?
Homelessness is referred to as a silent killer in that there's so many variables that go into it. A lot of individuals that are experiencing homelessness have chronic health conditions, have disabilities. A lot of them are seniors. They're over the age of 65. And when you're outside, you're weathering the storm day in and day out. You're in the wintertime, you're cold and you're freezing. In the summertime, you're hot and you're dehydrated. You're often going without, the food that you need. All of those things that are needed and everything to sustain life and to make it easier to survive in an environment. It wasn't until just this calendar year in 2022, that the Oregon State Legislature had started counting domicile unknown as, someone's place and everything when they died. Meaning that prior to 2022, individuals that were experiencing homelessness that passed away wasn't being reflected. They weren't being recorded. And so their deaths essentially were in silence. Like no one no one knew. It was never put on record that that individual, when they passed away without having a permanent safe place to sleep and lay their head at night.
Well, you also have been known to think that you can't think of the homeless as the homeless. There's no one size fit all. You have a wonderful expression that you have used to describe what a homeless person really is. And it was, everybody is somebody's somebody. That's a beautiful thing to say.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that when you're going out there in the community and just driving about, just going about your day-to-day life, that everybody out there was somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother, somebody's father, mother. Everybody out there is somebody to somebody else. Like they're connected, either friends or relatives. It was a term that came to me when I was conducting outreach one day. Someone posted on Facebook that there was an individual at the I-5 and Portland Road exit, just covered in bug bites. And I went out there and I raced out to that location, sat on the sidewalk with him, was talking to him, and he started telling me about his life story. He started talking to me about what he was going through, like how he ended up homeless, that he slept in a bush, the night before and just got eaten alive. And I asked him how old he was, and he had told me his age, and he was younger than I was. And it really hit me that that person could have been my brother, that person could have been my younger brother. That person could have been my sibling that was out there sitting on the sidewalk. And then I adopted kind of that mantra, that everybody out there is somebody. And that's what drives me every day in the work that I do, is that I'm doing it not just for myself, but I'm doing it for somebody else. Not everybody is fortunate enough to have the capacity that I do to be able to go out there and care for these individuals and, give them the supplies they need, give them the hope, give them that human connection. Some people just aren't in that place to give that. And I'm fortunate. I'm very lucky that I get that opportunity every day to wake up and, be somebody.
As I understand it, you had to have volunteers for this and they had to use an app. I mean, that's a really complicated process. And I'm thinking, how do you go about finding the people who need to be counted and then engage them? That's a whole art in itself, I would think.
It absolutely is. Finding volunteers and training them. This year when going out and finding volunteers, I literally just put it out there that if anybody wanted to get involved, they could get involved. I volunteer for another volunteer group on the outside, and one of their key roles is everybody has a role, know it. Like everybody has a way they can get involved. Everybody has something to give to a volunteer opportunity. And I just wanted anybody and everybody to just get involved, to get out there and to participate. And the reason for that is because homelessness affects everybody in the community. It affects those that are housed, it affects those that are unhoused, it affects those in shelters, it affects those that are living in cars, it affects business owners, it affects everybody. It affects everybody in the community. And what I wanted is I just wanted everybody in the community to get out there and see what it looked like firsthand, to interact with somebody, to hear their story, to hear what they went through. I wanted people to see that paradigm shift. As far as training goes, it was pretty easy. It was, it's pretty simple. Like once you understand how to use the app, like you can get out there and you can, go about it. We, put together materials. We put together, recorded Zoom links. We put stuff together on paper for those that wanted to read. In a non-COVID world where we could congregate and all get together, I would have loved to do an in-person training. And who knows, maybe next year we can do that, come together and, provide more in-person trainings. Well, I also offered it up to anybody that just wanted to give me a phone call or shoot me an email, wanted, just some like private time on the side to help them. We had volunteers show up at the volunteer centers that didn't even have the app downloaded. We had staff available there to get them connected and to give them the information that they needed so they could go out there, get involved and help us count individuals. As far as where we go to count individuals, everywhere. We go everywhere. We covered everything from, northern Marion County to southern Marion County, from eastern Marion all the way, west into Polk County. And, we tried to make sure that we left no rock, no stone unturned into counting every individual. Is it possible to count every individual experiencing homelessness? No. And, it's just because there's so many more people experiencing homelessness, and there are volunteers that, are able to get involved.
What kind of information are you asking people to voluntarily give you when you come across someone who was unsheltered?
Yeah, we're asking for basic demographic information, their age range, their race, their gender, whether or not that individual is fleeing domestic violence is a reason or anything that led to their homelessness. This year on the surveys, we were asking individuals if they became homeless as a result of the natural disaster. In 2020, the Eastern Marion County region was devastated by wildfires. So many people lost their homes. They lost everything. They were thrust into homelessness overnight. And, being able to track that information. COVID-19 has also played a big role in people becoming homelessness, job loss, evictions, health crises in the community. And what we really wanted was to gather that information as well and find out how many people really are experiencing homelessness as a result of COVID-19. And so what it does is it gathers those questions that allows us to put together and paint a better picture for the community and a better picture for, funders and other entities, so we can better understand what is the homelessness looking like in our community. Then what are some trends that we're noticing so we can address those and make sure that we're providing the appropriate resources and we're dedicating the appropriate responses.
The Community Action Agency is using this paradigm, and it's a paradigm shift, going away from treating homelessness as a management problem to actually trying to solve homelessness. And that is a collective process. Cities, county, regions, you're all working together. Is the information that each of you in your organizations gather put in a database somewhere so that you can all access it?
It is. We collectively in Marion and Polk County, we utilize what is called a Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. And HMIS is, really that pool of, data sharing and data collection that other entities can, go in there and they can pull that data if they're, like an HMIS user, and they can do it. But we also have so many more collaborative meetings. The Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, or the local COC, has really just in recent years taken, from individuals working separately to just bringing everybody together. Like, let's come to the table, let's discuss, let's talk, let's share. And that information gets shared, and, the knowledge from one group gets shared to another. And we're pooling ideas, we're pooling resources, we're pooling those numbers. And then that way, all those organizations can use those numbers to benefit, their programs and what they're doing, to, end homelessness, to address it and end homelessness. And those organizations are using it to, apply for grants, to educate the community about homelessness, about poverty in the community.
I understand that it also helps you track yourselves in your own performance. How well are we doing? Do we know what we're doing? And that is a collaborative effort. And it also brings me to another point, home first. I hear it all the time from local government. Home first. What does that mean?
The housing first model means that to really truly address the homelessness crisis, you got to address that they're homeless. Like, you got to put them in a house. It was common that people think, oh, well, like they can just get a job and they can pull themselves out of homelessness, or, they could, take care of their mental health issues and pull themselves out of homelessness, or, they can get clean and, like stop the cycle of addiction and then get out of homelessness. It was the, the old adage, just picking yourselves up by your bootstraps, but you can't buy bootstraps on Amazon. And, they're just not available. And what you see is that even if you got a job, there's still so much that goes into it. There's so many individuals that are experiencing homelessness that have jobs, but you need to save up. Like, you need a first month's rent, last month's rent. Rent prices for a studio are over $1,000 in the city of Salem. It would still take years to be able to pull yourself out of that. The cycle of addiction, you're homeless and you try to go to a daytime clinic to get clean and, sober, and, you do it and you're strong for, that 8 hours that it's daylight, but then you go into your tent. And I've heard this firsthand from, those that are struggling, and they go back into their tent and they hear the horrors of, and just the terrifying things that are happening, I think, just a little bit further down the trail. And people just do what they know to do to, escape that, to just put themselves somewhere else. If you take that individual and you put them in a place where they can lock the door and they can feel that sense of security and that sense of safety, have kind of like that assurance that things are going to be all right tonight, and then you let them adjust to that. And then you bring in, resources and case management, and then address the other thing, like the other barriers that they had to being self-sufficient in that housing situation. You're truly going to, see a huge difference in, like those that are struggling in the community and those that are facing homelessness. It truly does end. The success truly does end with housing individuals first. Housing first, get them locked into someplace safe, give them a safety net, and then let's start addressing the other things that they need to address.
Tell us a little bit about the one place in Salem, which is a place where there are units for homeless people, people who have been unsheltered, who also have in that same building caseworkers that help them and keep them connected. Does that
Absolutely.
work? Does that work?
Absolutely. Permanent supportive housing is the model, and it's used nationally. And our first partnership like that, Community Action Agency had partnered with Salem Housing Authority to open Redwood Crossing, and we're slated to open more. And what it does is it took those that were most vulnerable, those that were chronically homeless, and we put them into Redwood Crossing, and we provided on-site case management, on-site staff, and we didn't force anybody to come to services. It wasn't, hey, you stay here, anything but you've got to do X, Y, and Z. It wasn't an immediate like, hey, boot camp starts now. No, it was, hey, let's get you comfortable. And, like when you're ready, you'll come to us. And it's been successful. People have, like when they're ready, have come to us, wanting to take care of like the things that they need to take care of. They've started recognizing their own barriers. They felt comfortable being able to do it. We're seeing successes. We're seeing people and everything already moving out of, the Redwood Crossing unit and moving into, like other housing opportunities on, like with other, like rental assistance programs because they've been able to manage, they've been able to take care of what they need to take care of. And they're a little more self-sufficient. They don't need, the on-site staff all the time to help them out. They've kind of, like graduated to that next step. And it's been impactful. Wildly impactful in the community that we're excited to be able to continue building those opportunities throughout Salem.
This is something that we're going to be talking about in our next episode about homelessness and what is being done physically to help shelter. We're talking micro units, micro shelters. We're going to be having a series of those little villages where people have that exact thing, getting out of an encampment or a homelessness situation to at least some place where they don't go to sleep at night, terrified that if they have to leave for a medical emergency, that everything they have is going to be stolen. That's one of the things that is in favor of giving people a chance to do that. And it makes economic sense, does it not?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, every night when I go to bed, I lock the doors. It's a luxury that I take for granted every night when I get home. And, I live in a neighborhood and everything where there's not, a high crime rate, but I'm able to go in there and it's instinctive. It's instinctive from like an early age. As a young kid, you're taught always lock the door. There's safety in being able to just lock the door and just be in there. And so when you don't have that safety and you take that safety net away because you become homeless and then you add everything else that, comes into it, you spend your entire life and everything, like living in fear of, like what's going to happen to me when I close my eyes and go to bed tonight? How am I going to get food? How am I going to go see a doctor if I need to see a doctor? And all these things just pile on and just pile on. That when you start adding opportunities for individuals to, be able to lock the door, whether that be in, like a pallet shelter or, be able to, lock the door essentially, like in a shelter like Union Gospel Mission or Safe Sleep, where there's staff available, that are kind of watching over everybody should something happen. You start seeing a difference. You start seeing a difference in, like people's mental health. You start seeing, like a difference in, the things that people choose to cope with, like certain stressors that happen in life. And you just see a difference in the community overall.
Robert Marshall, thank you so very much for joining us today on InSight. You've given us a view of homelessness that few can, and we very much appreciate your insights today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us today on InSight. I'm Wendy Brokaw.